A freezer chills to nearly minus 180 degrees Celsius, the surface of Saturn's moon, Titan, rebuilt inside a lab on Earth. Researchers here are testing a cell wall that was never supposed to need a single drop of water. Titan's lakes are liquid methane, cold enough to turn our own biology to stone. In 2015, Cornell scientists James Stevenson, Jonathan Lunine, and Paulette Clancy designed a membrane for exactly this world. They called it an azotosome, built from nitrogen-rich molecules instead of the fats in our cells. Their simulation showed it folding into a stable, flexible sphere, eerily close to something alive. In 2017, NASA's Maureen Palmer confirmed the key ingredient, acrylonitrile, actually exists in Titan's atmosphere. The idea now had a blueprint, and real evidence that its parts were waiting on the same moon. In 2026, two researchers finally mixed acrylonitrile with liquid methane and ethane and watched. No membrane appeared. The molecules froze into an ordinary crystal and stopped there. One of astrobiology's most famous ideas had just lost its first real fight with actual chemistry. Every organism you've ever met needs water: human, oak tree, bacterium, jellyfish. Your blood is mostly water, your cells sit inside it, your chemistry happens nowhere else. Take enough of it away from your body, and your organs start failing within hours. So when astronomers hunt for life beyond Earth, they usually chase one signal: liquid water. Nothing requires the universe to run on Earth's rulebook, though. Somewhere out there, rain might fall from an orange sky into a sea that would dissolve every fish we know. On some other world, acid clouds could play the part oceans play here, and a local creature might treat water the way we treat battery acid. The real question was never whether life can survive without our particular ocean. It's whether chemistry, in any liquid at all, can organize itself, copy itself, and change over time. A solvent's job goes far beyond being wet. It's the stage where molecules meet, collide, and exchange information. A living system also needs a wall that keeps its useful molecules together and lets energy pass through without tearing it open. Waste needs an exit, while genetic information has to copy itself precisely enough to survive, yet loosely enough to evolve. None of those requirements mentions water by name. They're functions, not ingredients. Water simply happens to be extraordinarily good at all of them, at least here. Water molecules carry a small electrical imbalance, letting them wrap around ions and dissolve nutrients other liquids can't touch. Hydrogen bonds between water molecules snap and reform constantly, building a flexible cage around every protein and strand of DNA. That cage lets proteins fold into working shapes and keeps DNA stable enough to be read. Cell membranes exist in the first place because oily molecules hide from water, clumping into protective layers. Water also absorbs huge amounts of heat without swinging wildly in temperature, the reason a pond warms slowly and a body cools by sweating. On paper, water looks less like one option among many and more like a cosmic jackpot. Its record isn't perfect, though. Water is also an aggressive molecule breaker, tearing apart bonds that early chemistry needed to build itself. Modern cells dodge that problem with enzymes and membranes that carefully manage their internal chemistry. The very first chemical systems on Earth had none of that protection. Life may have needed cycles of wet and dry, mineral surfaces, or ice. Even life on our own planet might not have started in water alone. That gap in the story leaves room for something stranger. If another liquid can move molecules around without destroying every structure they build, evolution could learn to use it. Alien biochemistry wouldn't need to copy our proteins, our DNA, or our membranes, only something that does the same job. The first candidate waiting past water is ammonia, the sharp, corrosive chemical under your kitchen sink. On a colder world, it could be an ocean instead. Liquid ammonia is polar too, able to dissolve compounds that oil or methane never could. Its molecules take part in acid-base chemistry, though the rules shift from ours. Something stable in your bloodstream might dissolve instantly there, while something toxic to you could thrive. A creature built around ammonia wouldn't be a frostbitten Earth animal. Its chemistry would need rebuilding from the ground up for cold. Cold slows reactions, and a metabolism running on ammonia might tick over so slowly that one heartbeat takes months. That sounds absurd only because we measure life against our own pace. Evolution has no clock of its own, and given billions of stable years, patience isn't a problem. Under enough pressure, ammonia can stay liquid across temperatures where it would otherwise freeze or boil. Mixed with water, it stays fluid at temperatures where pure water would already be ice. the kind of ocean that could hide beneath a distant moon's crust. Ammonia has its own dangers too, breaking down some bonds and evaporating easily into the air around it. No ammonia-based organism has ever been found, but it's proof that water isn't the only liquid worth taking seriously. The next candidate is far stranger, Titan itself. Saturn's largest moon has rivers, rain, and seas, almost none of it water. Titan is so cold that water ice behaves like solid rock, not something you could ever drink. Liquid methane and ethane carve the channels instead, running beneath a thick orange haze. Sunlight breaks methane apart high in that atmosphere, and the fragments recombine into increasingly complex carbon-based molecules that drift down like snow. Titan has both a liquid environment and an enormous stockpile of organic material, a laboratory that seems built for life without water. Except liquid methane behaves almost like water's opposite, with no real electrical charge to speak of. Salts and charged molecules barely dissolve in it, and our proteins would lose the forces that fold them. Our DNA would stop working entirely, and our membranes couldn't assemble the way they do here. Anything living in those lakes would need chemistry built from scratch for a world with no polarity. Exactly the gap Stevenson, Lunine, and Clancy tried to fill with the azotosome in 2015. For a moment, every ingredient for a methane-based cell seemed to already be sitting on the same world. Then, in 2020, a separate team at Chalmers University in Sweden ran the numbers again and reached the opposite conclusion. Their calculations found the azotosome thermodynamically unstable, unlikely to assemble under Titan's real conditions. Two respected models now disagreed, and only an actual experiment could settle it. That experiment happened in 2026, when Tuan Vu and Robert Hodis mixed acrylonitrile with liquid methane and ethane under Titan-like cold. Acrylonitrile didn't form a membrane, it crystallized with the ethane instead and stayed that way. The most famous blueprint for waterless life had just lost a decade-long argument to a beaker. That doesn't rule Titan out. It rules out one specific idea, out of many still on the table. Methane life, if it exists, might use mineral pores, floating films, or no membrane resembling ours at all. Some researchers even question whether the earliest life anywhere needed a membrane in the first place. A chemical system can stay concentrated inside a crack in rock or a droplet long before it ever needs a wall. Titan complicates its own story further, since beneath that frozen crust there's likely a genuine ocean of liquid water. An impact could briefly melt surface ice, mixing that water with all the organic material falling from the sky. Life there could conceivably start in water and adapt afterward to drier, hydrocarbon-soaked conditions. Or, Titan's chemistry could simply never cross into biology at all. Complex organic molecules aren't automatic proof of life. Nature builds impressive chemistry without any metabolism behind it. The real dividing line may come down to one feedback loop. Do the reactions help preserve and copy the system that made them? Whether methane chemistry can ever cross that line remains completely unknown. A second alien ocean might be hiding much closer to home, in the clouds of Venus. Venus's surface is hot enough to melt lead, but 48 kilometers up, its clouds sit at a mild, Earth-like temperature. Those clouds aren't water droplets. They're concentrated sulfuric acid, strong enough to dissolve skin on contact. For decades, that alone was reason enough to write Venus off entirely. In 2024, MIT researchers Maxwell Seeger, Sarah Seeger, William Baines, and Janusz Petkowski tested the idea directly. They soaked 20 amino acids, the building blocks of every protein on Earth, in Venus-strength sulfuric acid. 19 of the 20 survived for weeks, either untouched or only lightly altered. The same team later found that simple lipid molecules can assemble into stable, membrane-like structures in that same acid. No result here confirms a living cell. What it confirms is that the acid isn't the chemical dead zone everyone assumed. Real biology from Earth would still struggle badly there. The bonds holding our proteins together tend to fall apart, and there's almost no free water to work with. Any organism there would need its own protective chemistry, or a completely different set of working molecules. To a creature built for sulfuric acid, our oceans might look weak, watered down, almost inert. The theory is still speculative, but it's cleared a real threshold. Scientists can now test specific molecules instead of only arguing from imagination. Zoom out, and a wider survey of candidate liquids tells a similar story. Judged on abundance, dissolving power, and chemical stability, concentrated sulfuric acid scores better than its reputation suggests. Liquid carbon dioxide, compressed into a dense fluid instead of a gas, is another candidate worth studying. Almost nothing is known about whether it can support folding, memory, or evolution. Formamide, certain hydrocarbons, and exotic molten salts remain open questions too. A solvent can look perfect in a lab and still be too rare to ever fill a planetary ocean. Another can be abundant everywhere and still tear apart complex molecules before biology gets a chance to start. Water's real advantage may simply be logistics. Hydrogen and oxygen are two of the most common elements in the universe. Rocky planets, icy moons, comets, and asteroids all carry it in enormous quantities. Step back further, and the mystery gets bigger than any single liquid. A universal living system probably needs controlled reactions and a reliable source of energy. It also needs a way to remember what worked, some form of inheritance that can vary and pass on. None of that requires blue oceans, oxygen-rich air, or carbon shaped like the life around you. Carbon still makes a strong case for itself, since few elements form as many stable, varied bonds. But even carbon chemistry changes character when the solvent around it changes. In water, oily molecules cluster together because water pushes them away. In methane, that instinct reverses completely, and nonpolar compounds mix freely while charges struggle to separate at all. A protein perfectly shaped for one liquid could unfold into nothing in another. Imagine sending a probe into an alien sea, built only to detect DNA. It could sail straight through a living ecosystem and report back that the water was empty. A sensor tuned to Earth-style membranes might miss a boundary built from minerals or unfamiliar polymers entirely. One designed to flag oxygen could sail past a biosphere that treats oxygen as a poison. Even motion is no safe test, since plenty of living things barely move while plenty of lifeless chemistry flows and pulses on its own. The search for alien life, then, is really a search for a signature that works everywhere, not just here. Instead of one special molecule, scientists increasingly look for chemical imbalance, energy being used to hold matter away from equilibrium. Every confirmed living thing we've studied is a bacterium, a mushroom, a whale, or you, one family, one shared origin. Studying millions of Earth species isn't the same as studying millions of independent experiments in what life can be. We've examined one branch of one tree and mistaken its habits for the rules of the whole forest. Finding life that never needed water would break that illusion instantly. It would prove biology isn't a rare accident tied to one perfect liquid, but something matter can cross into more than one way. The payoff would reach past astronomy, since enzymes built for methane or acid could drive reactions water makes impossible. Unfamiliar membranes could survive extremes ours never would. Getting there starts with reaching the right worlds and asking the right questions. NASA's Dragonfly mission, headed for Titan's surface, isn't built to detect life directly, but it will map how far Titan's organic chemistry travels before water becomes necessary. Future missions to Venus aim to sample acid droplets directly and test whether their chemistry stays purely geological. Telescopes studying exoplanet atmospheres keep hunting for chemical activity that doesn't look like Earth at all. Labs keep freezing, pressurizing, and rebuilding molecules in every alien liquid they can simulate. Most of those experiments will fail, the same way the azotosome did in 2026. That's not wasted effort. Every failure narrows down what life actually requires to exist. Titan is no less mysterious for the azotosome's collapse. Imagination just met chemistry, and chemistry won this round. The next model will use different molecules, a different boundary, maybe a completely different idea of what a cell even is. For now, every organism we've ever confirmed still runs on the same ancient solvent. It's the one connecting the first cells on Earth to the thought moving through your brain right now. That dependence might be a universal law of biology, or it might just be the local accent of one small, wet planet. Somewhere out there, an alien ocean could be waiting to prove that life never needed water at all,